In 1961, a Russian cosmonaut became the first man in space. And ever since then, our view of Earth has become more and more clear. This is our planet, a place we call home, and we share it together. The mountains, the valleys, oceans, and waterfalls, sunrises, sunsets. Earth is beautiful. And other creatures call this home too. They hunt. They roam. They fly. And some of the most magnificent creatures live in our oceans. But what about pollution, and how does it affect us? We, the environmental professional, know the impact. And the future is in our hands.
Welcome to the show. This is the 2020 Global EnvrioSummit, and we are coming to you live or virtually from Charlotte, North Carolina. Our theme for the week is accelerating trends and advancing technology. Now, here in Charlotte, it is the home of NASCAR, and we're just up the street from the NASCAR Hall of Fame. So hitting the accelerator is something we're pretty familiar with. In the Latin, it's called acceleratus. I just happen to know that. To cause faster or greater activity, development, progress, or results. Increasing or intensifying, I love this part, the velocity of work. It's like the song says, life in the fast lane. Advancing at a rapid pace. Seems like change has never been happening faster. We all know how technology is bringing about rapid change. Seems we're always playing catch up. Technology is creating in so many cases a newer, better, faster way. Artificial intelligence is always at work, making its way into almost every area of our life, our business, and our habits. AI is everywhere. Alexa is famous. Just in my, and for many of you, your lifetime, look at what's happened to computers. I mean, once upon a time, only NASA and space programs had them. They were as big as a house, or at least as big as your living room. They weighed hundreds, maybe thousands of pounds. They were fixed, bolted down, later chained to a desktop. But now, they fit in our lap or in just one hand. One of the great technology additions to the EnvrioSummit this year, we have partnered with a virtual event app called Socio, S-O-C-I-O. Now, it's a great way to watch the presentations right on your phone or device and to follow up with your speakers and exhibitors. It has almost everything on there from the conference, including the programs that you can download. So get the app, Socio, S-O-C-I-O, set up your personal profile, and then search for the EnvrioSummit. It'll ask for a code, and that code is simply EnvrioSummit 2020 in all caps. About the only thing the app doesn't have is how much fun we had in the golf tournament that I played in yesterday with everyone here. And through the use of technology, you can see some of the photographic evidence of the great time we had together at Ballantine Resort. Hopefully, by next year, you can join us here in person, live in Charlotte, for a little golf together. 2020 has certainly brought about much change for all of us, including taking many live events online. But in doing so, maybe creating greater virtual opportunities than we could have even imagined. Hundreds have registered to attend this conference from all across the world. We have people joining us from all across Europe, Africa, the Middle East, Asia, Australia, even South America. Individuals watching in places like Nepal and Mongolia. So it's staggering to see the reach that we have virtually. So let's get started by introducing a very special guest from this great city of Charlotte and the surrounding metro area of Mecklenburg County. Please give a rousing virtual welcome to County Manager Ms. Dina Diorio.
Thank you for that introduction. Good morning, everybody. I'm Dina Diorio, Mecklenburg County Manager. I'd like to welcome you to Charlotte, whether you're here virtually or in person, for the Global 2020 EnvrioSummit. As County Manager, I'm honored to have Mecklenburg County serve as the host location for this year's event. Mecklenburg County is the home of more than 1 million residents, and our population continues to grow. The Charlotte metro area ranks 6th in the nation in attracting young adults to the area. Whether it is for a robust job market, diverse communities, or thriving social scene, Mecklenburg County is among the nation's most desired places to live. And as the county continues to grow, so does the need to protect the many aspects that make Mecklenburg County so desirable, including our environment. That is why the Board of County Commissioners established the Environmental Stewardship Committee. The committee is responsible for recommending strategies and policies that will conserve and protect the most valuable natural resources in our community, including the air we breathe, the quality of the water in our lakes and streams, as well as our land and biological resources. But our work of protecting the environment stretches far beyond the committee. The county's Park and Recreation Department aggressively searches for opportunities to acquire land for open space to ensure that our community continues to provide places for residents to recreate and to protect natural resources. The department also partners with the local 4-H Cooperative Extension Center to provide programming and resources for agriculture and the environment. The county's Land Use and Environmental Services Agency, also known as LUISA, works through its stormwater services, air quality, and solid waste divisions to form partnerships and implement programs geared towards supporting our mission. From establishing plans such as air quality's Breathing Room Path Forward, to erosion and water quality inspections, to flood preparedness and safety to pollution prevention. And even amid a pandemic, Mecklenburg County continues to find creative opportunities to achieve our goal of protecting the environment while educating the public. During the pandemic, the county's Stormwater Services Division launched a weekly Facebook Live learning opportunity called Water Wednesday. The learning series is geared at educating our youth through a 20-minute weekly broadcast on water quality and floodplain issues. So once again, I'd like to thank you for choosing Mecklenburg County as the location for you to collectively learn about ways to overcome the many challenges facing our environment. For those of you here in person, I hope you enjoy your visit to Mecklenburg County. And to those of you who are participating virtually, I look forward to hopefully hosting this summit again next year so that you can see all that Mecklenburg County has to offer. I hope you enjoy the conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Diorio. Thank you for all your hospitality and for all you do in making Charlotte and the surrounding area great. I came to Charlotte in 1992 with my family, and we've lived here ever since. Just amazing to see all the changes and the scope of growth around this city. And now Charlotte is host to our big virtual event, the EnvrioSummit. So we have a packed out day one, so let's shift it on into high gear and bring you what you're here for. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce you to someone that you'll be seeing a lot of over the next few days. This gentleman really needs no introduction since so many of you already know him from all around the globe. He is an author, film producer, family man, and as many of you already know, he's a committed and passionate advocate for our planet, leading the way in cleaning up the pollution we face all around the world. He started the environmental workshops in 2013 as a way to teach and train environmental professionals, as well as creating awareness of the latest technologies in the industry. And word quickly spread as those workshops and events and the interest in them increased all around the world. His company has hosted over 400 Enviro workshops on 6 continents, 20 countries, and over 25,000 environmental professionals have registered either in person or online for the training. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Executive Director of the Global EnvrioSummit and my friend, Mr. Travis Bowman. Travis?
Well, thank you so much, Michael, and welcome to everyone to the 2020 Global EnvrioSummit. Thank you so much for tuning in, and wherever you are in the world, I know we've got hundreds, maybe thousands watching from different countries, whether you're in your home office or whether you're at your office at your city, or maybe you're tuning in on your phone, as Michael was talking about with Socio. So thanks so much for tuning in to the EnvrioSummit. Hey, you know, here in our industry, as an environmental professional, I just want to talk environmental professional to another. Sometimes we are so misunderstood in this industry. I mean, I think people sometimes think of us as just tree huggers or just extremists. And the reality is it's so much more than that. When I first got into the industry, it was about 15 years ago, and I will never forget one of the early sites that I was working on. It was a soil and groundwater contaminated site. It was probably one of the most contaminated sites at the time, right here in North Carolina. And I was providing some technologies that would really help clean up the site. It was an old gas station that had been closed down years earlier. And as we're just digging this huge hole, digging out the contamination and hauling it off, and then really dealing with some of the residual, with some of the technologies that we had, an elderly lady came walking across the street. Now, the former gas station was hundreds of feet away from her house, but yet she comes across and she says, "Thank you so much for cleaning up this site." She said, "For years I had been, hosing my garden with just the garden hose, and every time I would hose my plants, I could smell the fumes. I could just smell the gasoline." And she said, "I didn't know why or where. I knew there was a gas station across the street, but in her mind she thought, it's so far away from her house and her backyard. It was like, a huge distance for her in her mind. But she was thanking me for cleaning it up. And that really helped me understand, no matter whether you misunderstand this industry or not, the reality is we all want clean drinking water. Politics aside, it doesn't matter what politician you want to vote for. You and I, we all want good, clean soil to grow our crops in. As I've traveled around the globe and been in different cities and different hotels in different countries, it's interesting to see the different levels of clean drinking water that is out there around the globe. It's really staggering to some degree. In some countries you go in, they say don't drink the water because you most likely will end up sick. And if you've traveled globally, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Listen, what I'm trying to say is what you do matters. What you do matters. So if people misunderstand you, it really doesn't matter. Because you might be working on a site way out in the middle of the field somewhere, and the community around it will never know who you are and what you're doing for the clean drinking water and the cleaning up the pollution in the soil. Or maybe it's the air. So sometimes it feels like it's just a thankless job, but what you do is critical. I think one of the greatest things that we could do is clean up the pollution now that we know what is going on in terms of the chemistry and how it affects how it ends up in the soil, how it ends up in the drinking water. We didn't know that decades ago, but now we know. I think we owe it to the next generation to be responsible citizens to clean that up. And so that's really what the EnvrioSummit is about, and that's what I'm so glad that you've tuned in to really look at the latest technologies in the industry. As you can see by our theme, accelerating trends and advancing technologies. And that's what we're focused on here with 75 different speakers over the next couple of days. Well, like I mentioned, as I've traveled around the globe with the workshops, we've hosted over 400 workshops on 6 different continents now, and many of our sponsors are just, really they're incredible to travel with. And one sponsor in particular, Microbial Insights, they weren't able to be here, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, but Dora Taggart, she's the president of Microbial Insights, and if you're not familiar with their company, they're really the leaders when it comes to molecular tools and the molecular technologies in this industry. But I've been with their team, whether it's from Australia to Africa to China, all across Europe. We've traveled together around the globe, and their technologies are some of the, truly leading edge when it comes to the environmental industry. So if you're not familiar with Microbial Insights, watch this clip, and it'll help you understand a little bit more about Microbial Insights.
The goal for Microbial Insights is to be, although we're a biotechnology lab, to really help the remediation industry understand the microorganisms that are present in the subsurface. So do you have Dihalococoides present that can clean up your chlorinated solvent spills? What quantity do you have? Do you have enough that you're going to get efficient rates of reductive dechlorination? If you have a petroleum spill, what types of pathways are present that can remediate those compounds? We were founded in 1992. So we've processed over 40,000 samples from sites all over the world, 35 different countries on 5 different continents. Every state in the United States we've received samples from. So as that experience, we can really help you understand what that data means. How do you apply it so you can make an actionable decision at your site? So Microbial Insights has 5 sampling locations. We have one in Knoxville, Tennessee, here in the United States. We have a location just outside Brussels for all the European clients. We have a location in Adelaide for all of our Australian clients, and then just north of Beijing for anyone shipping samples from Asia, and then just outside Toronto in Canada. Generating this actionable data allows you to make those site decisions that are important, and we are an independent lab. We don't sell any remediation products or any bioaugmentation products or cultures. So it's our goal at Microbial Insights to really provide you with accurate data. We don't want to sell you analysis that you don't need. We want you to have actionable data that generates to you making a real change. Microbial Insights really wants to be the microbiologist that you can add to your team of experts to help you make really efficient decisions at your sites.
Well, like I said, we have 75 speakers here packed over the next couple of days, and they're from around the world. And really, truly, as I've been traveling around the world with Microbial Insights and a number of our other sponsors, I have been learning so much myself as an environmental professional and seeing what is going on around the world. And so, I thought it's time to pull together the different speakers from around the world and really kind of host a conference. Now, of course, when I started planning this a year ago with my team, I was thinking an in-person conference. Here we are with the pandemic, and what's interesting is just being able to pipe this out to you around the world. And so I don't know where you are tuning in, but I'm so glad that we're, to some degree, a silver lining in the pandemic, right, is being able to get this information out to you. Well, let me tee up our first speaker. As we've been going to Canada for, probably 6 years now, I want to say, and hosting our training, our Enviro workshops up there in Canada. We've gone to, I think, about 10 different cities across from East Coast to West Coast, and just some amazing beauty up there in Canada. But we've had a number of speakers from Canada speak at our workshops over the years, but one that's been there from the beginning, Jean Pellet, he's French, he's from Quebec. But I love hearing him speak, obviously because of his accent, but I also love just hearing his knowledge, and he's been in this industry for a long time, really probably from somewhat to say the beginning of just remediation, in particular cleaning up soil and groundwater impacts in Canada. And so from early on, he's been there, and he's I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds of sites that he's worked on, but obviously we've got him here virtual today, and so really take plenty of notes. By the way, I don't know if we mentioned, but make sure you download our program, and you'll see Jean's bio in our program, and there's a place for you to take notes. So buckle up. Jean's got a really good presentation for you on what's going on in Canada.
Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a great day today. It is a pleasure to be with you to talk about the Canadian remediation market. And hopefully you'll learn a few things about our great country and the way we deal with contaminated site up here. Thanks again for attending. So the first part of my presentation will touch the Canadian geographical situation. What kind of geology are we finding onto our sites? Then we'll talk about the market itself, how it evolved, where it's in place, talking about the federal program initiative, how it's encouraged to get remediation done on site. Then we'll do some coast-to-coast case studies and talk a little bit about Chemco's expertise, who we are, what we do, and how we come, in contact with the different players in the industry. So the first thing is about the geography itself. Canada is a huge country. It's the second largest country by surface on Earth, Russia being the first. And so we have about 90,000 kilometers of border with the United States. So that's the longest international border in the world. And if you're moving from east to west, looking at the Canadian map just beside, we're talking about 5,500 kilometers. So you can imagine just going from one side, from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean, moving from west to east, that there's a lot of geology, there's a lot of challenges that comes with remediating sites all across the country. And so the next map I'm showing is kind of a superficial analysis of the different geologies. As you can imagine, if you're on the Pacific coast, there's a lot of glacier activity that was recorded in that section. So there's a lot of glacial till, very compact. Most of the green that you're seeing are bedrock formation that is part of the what we call the Canadian boulder. And then as you're moving up east, you can see the activity that is in around the Great Lake in the Toronto area, where there's a lot of sediments like silt, clays in around the Great Lake area. And then you're moving all the way up east, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and the rest. So there's a lot of geologies that are present, and obviously we need to adapt, adjust, and make sure that we get our technology in the right place, in the right fashion. So, as I was explaining, geology varies a lot by location. And for example, here, I took kind of Manitoba and Saskatchewan that are right in the middle of Canada. And these two provinces are typically sitting on plastic clay. So we're talking hydraulic conductivity 10 minus 10, 10 minus 11. Now, when we have that in Quebec, where I live, is we typically build landfills on this because penetration is very minimal. So you can imagine when you have a spill or a contaminated site in these provinces, contamination doesn't move very far down. And that's one thing that, is taken or one of the particularities of our country when it comes to remediation of sites. Now, moving down into the other portion of site remediation, which is legislation. Canada is composed of many provinces and regions. So depending on which region of Canada we're located, there's different set of law that apply for site remediation. If we're talking about the Atlantic, now moving from east to west, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland, Labrador, they are mostly using risk-based approaches. So they are developing some risk-based parameters, and guess what? If you're okay with the risk, then that's the only activity that you'll have to do. Now, in the other provinces or territories, it's more like science-based standard about toxicity. Some of them are using the federal standards. Some provinces have their own. And so it depends on if there's a vapor intrusion issue, if it's a groundwater issue, if it's a soil issue. So so these standards are also obviously implemented for the toxicity of the contaminant, but also the use of the land. Now, obviously, if it's industrial versus residential versus commercial, there might be different standards that are applying on the site. And same thing for the soil type. Moving on to the remediation market by itself, we do have some federal programs that are in place. The bigger one, which is called the Federal Contaminated Site Action Program or Action Plan, was established in 2005, so 15 years ago. At the time, there were $4.54 billion that were put into the program, and it just got extended this year as we're hitting the 15-year mark with an extension of $1.16 billion. Now, the other side will describe what kind of activity we've seen so far, but during the COVID crisis that just hit us, the federal program also launched a program for orphan well and inactive well into the oil-producing provinces of Canada, and that's where there was a $1.72 billion envelope that was given to the government of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and British Columbia to deal with these particular sites. Now, there is some provincial programs that are trying to put some emphasis on remediation, mostly brownfield redevelopment and stuff. So in Quebec, for example, there's the Climasol Plus program, where when there's funding associated with green use, or if you're building an infrastructure onto the land, it can't be a parking lot, it has to be something that is contributing to lesser greenhouse emission. But overall, this, if we're looking at the remediation market as a whole, it's really the private sector, the site owner, the site stakeholders that are responsible for the major activities that we found in around Canada. The next slide is describing the amount of how the federal site inventory has evolved through the first phase of the FSAP program. So you could see in 2005, there were about 5,000 sites that were associated or found at risk. And then you could see, the amount of sites that were able to reach closure after 5 years, after 10 years, and after 15 years. It is sure that for the first 10 years, a lot of assessment was done. And now we're really into the phase 3, which is trying to close down as many sites as possible. Main objective is public safety, public health, and then cut down the liability of the federal government with the contamination that we can find on these sites. So that is for the Federal Contaminated Site Program. I don't have specific data for privately owned sites because they're privately owned, and obviously it's not public data. Now, when it comes to pick up site remediation technique, and we've talked about the different type of geologies that can be found into Canada, there's an array of technology can be applied, and it moves from dig and haul either to a landfill or to a treatment facility. It could be as simple as a pump and treat. And then we're going to talk about example here today about where we've applied some in situ technology. I've talked about risk analysis being a big thing in the Atlantic provinces, but at the end of the day, it's always time and money. When you look at your site and you have to decide what to do with it, you got to look obviously in how the contamination is positioned, what type of contamination is there, and what type of criteria you got to meet. But in order to meet the remedial objective for that particular site, you got to get the evaluation of what's my timing to achieve that goal and what's the money available. So moving on with some case studies here. The first case is a very large industrial site, and I've taken it into consideration for the presentation because of the timeline that's associated with the work there. So the first picture describes you the size of the site. So it's a former industrial facility where some ore was transformed, mining ore. So it's a sandy aquifer. You could see up on the top portion of that screen a very nice beach, which is a very nice sandy beach. So the whole site is really a sandy aquifer. So it's very fast flowing water, and the impacts is mostly an hydrocarbon site. And I'll talk a bit more about how we're splitting the different contaminant here in Canada. But this is a petroleum hydrocarbon site, typically DRO type contaminant. The second slide, so for the first portion of the project, it was a 7-year effort. So from 2007 to 2014, we were working a band of soil that was contaminated down gradient of an hydraulic barrier. So we were talking about a 50 to 100 meter wide band where we conducted chemical oxidation. In that particular instance, hydrogen peroxide was used with a catalyst and stabilizer package. And we've applied this typically from May to about November, because after that, site condition with the snow and the cold was not allowing work. So really it was a 6-month effort every year. And so we were applying down gradient of that barrier. Now in 2015, so we were obviously monitoring every start of every season. We were meeting remedial objectives. So at that time, it was decided to let it sit for another year, see if rebound was coming. And then in 2016, the soil and the groundwater were clean down to the established criteria that we were trying to meet. So at that time, it was decided that the technology, the site, we were able to attain site closure, and the technology worked in the fashion that we wanted to work. What this has launched, though, is phase 2. And that's kind of the impressive portion of the site where, remember that when in phase 1, we were treating a band of 50 meter to 100 meter by a kilometer long. Now we're talking about a plume dimension of a kilometer by a kilometer, which is the upgradient portion of the hydraulic barrier. So in that regard, the treatment time frame, we first conducted some pilot scale to establish, a rate of pumping, radius of influence, and moving on to a full-scale treatment that started last year in 2019. Now, project scope over there is of 20 years. So we're talking about 20 years of active treatment, which will be encompassing either in situ chemical oxidation, soil washing technology, and enhanced bioremediation effort in different zones. We're talking about injecting an annual volume of about 20 million liters of injectant in different quadrants. And this thing will evolve and grow depending on results and the response that we're getting as we're moving, within the different zone within the sector. So that's the first case study I wanted to go over with you, and just to show you the size of that site. Now, the second study I'm putting in there is we're moving west from Quebec into Ontario. And in that regard, because it's close to the lake, there's a lot of sediment type geology, and we're talking about a very tight clay over there. So the site description, you can see the layout here. It's right under a building. The contour, the purple contour that you're seeing on the picture are typically the TCE concentration at different locations on the site. And so you could see it also cross over the property boundary, which was a concern from the customer. Just going over a few particularities of that site is we're talking about a contamination is about 30-year-old. So it is sorbed into that clay matrix. So we wanted to have something, we're talking about a depth of 3 to 5 meters below ground surface. It is an operating plant, so there's no way we can excavate or get that out. The level of remediation are very low. We're talking about 90 or 99% removal rate for the different CVOC contaminant. So what was decided on that site was to use a combination of biotic and abiotic pathways of degradation on the CVOCs. And so the way we were going to do that is use fully soluble amendments. So we're talking about using a fermentable carbon substrate and a soluble iron substrate that were co-injected together. The injected concentration was calculated to reach about 10% of the effective core volume, so we can get proper distribution in the subsurface. And it was a slow process, if you can think. Because of the clay, we didn't want to frack in. We really want to have some permeation. So injection proceeded over 8 weeks. Moving on to the injection grid, which you can see on the second, you can see how we were trying to hit all of the contour with the direct push point. And you can imagine here, you can see on the first picture on top, a geoprobe being positioned into an office space where the injection was occurring. And the second one, I've put it into the locker room. So it was a challenge to get the material in the clay, but it was also a great challenge just to be able to access the grid point within the existing building. And remember, this is an operating facility. So talking about some results here, so what I'll show up next on that particular case study is the monitoring well that were used so we were doing quarterly post-injection monitoring, first to establish if we were getting proper distribution of our amendments, but secondly, to look at how the contaminant were responding to the amendment injection. So moving to the graph, which is presented at the next slide, you could see the 4 monitoring wells. So 403, 406, 101, and 402. So one of the interesting aspects in our legislation is that when we're dealing with CVOC contamination in Canada, we want to minimize as much as possible the formation of the vinyl chloride. And as you know, if you're using the biotic degradation pathway for the CVOCs, what will be occurring is that you will be forming that vinyl chloride. So we want to minimize that. And so that's why we went with a conjunction of fermentable carbon substrate and soluble iron. So I'll put it your attention to MW402, which is on the right-hand side of the graph, where we could see the initial spike on the TCE level, which is the blue column. Then you could see as time progresses after 6, 12, 18, and 24 months, the spike in the DCE level, which is the gray column, but we never saw a spike on the vinyl chloride, which means that we were combining both biotic and abiotic pathways of degradation in that on that particular site. So after 24 months, some of the wells, some of the zones that you've seen in the original contour are now deemed to meet the remediation criteria. For those that are still a little bit above, and talking here about MW406, there'll be a second injection coming up in a portion of that site just to make sure that we polish off down to the required criteria for the whole site. So it has the particularity of being a clay, tough to distribute, so we went with a full soluble amendment. And the second one is we didn't want to produce any vinyl chloride, so we combine both fermentable carbon and a soluble iron into a tight matrix operating building. So make it a lot of fun. So we were able to keep the reducing condition for over 24 months. We were able to pull back the plume from the property line, and then the EHCl that was used in there was able to limit the vinyl chloride concentration buildup as it was degrading the contaminant. I'm moving down now to our third case study, and we're going all the way to Western Canada here, to the very limit of Canada, which is British Columbia. That particular one is interesting because I'm just showing you a quick map here of all the locations we've been using this technology on the lower mainland of Vancouver. So we're not talking Vancouver Island here, but Vancouver, the city. And one of the particularity of that mainland is that if we're moving to the superficial geology, all of the green area that you could see is glacial till. So we're talking very hard, very compact geology. And in that regard, most people will not consider doing in situ work in these type of conditions because of poor distribution and difficulty of accessing, contacting our amendment with the contaminant of concern. Now, if we're moving to the chemistry that was used, is we've decided to couple together a chemical oxidation process with an enhanced bioremediation product. So it's a combination of sodium persulfate with calcium peroxide. So what happened here, and it's quite an interesting concept as we've applied it a lot of time on very tight geologies, is that you would get an initial kick for the chemical oxidant that would last anywhere between, let's say, 3 to 12 weeks with the sodium persulfate that will be activated by the alkalinity generated from the calcium peroxide. So for those who don't know persulfate, it does not generate gas, it does not generate heat, and when you're doing what we call the alkaline activation at high pH above 10, we have minimal amount of corrosion on subsurface structure made of steel, which is great. And we have also a minimal impact on the concrete structures also. So again, coming back to the chemical oxidation part, it lasts 3 to 12 weeks. When it's completed, what happened is that if we didn't reach a criteria or didn't destroy or mineralize all the contaminant, the organic contaminant, which is in this case, petroleum hydrocarbon again, is we would have lower toxicity. Lower toxicity means that the bacteria are able to come back and repopulate more easier. The other thing that happened, if you were talking about a long chain hydrocarbon, let's say a C23 or C30, if we're just partially oxidizing that long chain hydrocarbon, what will happen in here is that there will be more bioavailability from the shorter chain hydrocarbon. So the calcium peroxide kicks off once the oxidation is complete. It has a profile of release of anywhere between 6 to 12 months. So that enables us to get polishing on any kind of residual contamination that is there. What you'll see is kind of a cross-section here of a glacial till example where we excavated as far as we could the source, but there were still contamination that were found on the wall of the excavation. So the thing that's playing in our favor in the Vancouver area for this technology is simple. It rains a lot in Vancouver, so the groundwater level are very close to surface, which makes that we're in saturated condition because you can't apply this technology if you're not in the saturated condition. So the application, coming back to the picture here at the next slide, you'll see the product is applied right at the bottom of the excavation as there were still some contamination lingering there, and we want to make sure we can treat what's at the bottom. But we also are using a high pressure hose to get into the wall and into the section of the contaminated zone. And at the tip of that hose, we're applying very high pressure, anywhere between, let's say, 200 up to 2000 psi. And what happened is we really create an intimate mix of the selected chemistries into the targeted zone where the contaminant is located. So it's really a bit of a way of putting a soil mixing into a very tight geology, like a glacial till. Now, the next slide just show you what kind of results we were able to achieve within that excavation. So we were starting as high as 4,000 milligram per kilogram of contaminant. And you could see here the long chain in the short chain hydrocarbon, which are listed EPH 10 to 19 and EPH 19 to 32. So if we're starting from the top at the base of the excavation, we're talking about removal of 90% plus of the contamination within a time frame of 3 to 4 months. So it was a very quick reduction, and it has to do a lot with the soil mixing and the way we're applying the chemistry. Idealized contact makes for great reduction. And so we were able to get down to criteria on that site, again, within that 9 weeks period. I said 3 or 4 months, but it's even shorter than that. The other thing that's important, and I've talked about it at the earlier stage of my presentation, is the economics. Because we were working in around a home, a residential home, dig and haul, if we were to remove all contamination through excavation, would have required some underpiling and destruction of some infrastructure that were on the site, make it obviously a cheaper option to use an in-situ technology in that particular case. Other thing that I might say, if you remember the first page that I showed you earlier, where we had all the sites that were done between 2015 and 2018, of these, we're now up to about 100 sites. Only 2 of these sites need to be reapplied with chemistry. So it was really a one event solution to work on these sites and to remediate these sites. And the bigger thing that we were doing to do that is the method of application, that where we were creating an intimate contact again between the selected amendment and the targeted contaminant zone. So that is typically my Canadian market overview. What I'll do with you guys now is a little bit talk about who's Shemco, who I am, and what do we do in Canada. So first, we're a privately owned company. Our activity only touches Canada, so we have warehouse all across to be able to serve our local customers. We have many divisions. The division that we were talking about today is really about soil and groundwater. But we represent a lot of suppliers. And so when we do design for these sites, we always try to do kind of a niche approach. that takes into consideration the site-specific geology, hydrogeology, the budgeting, the timing for the remediation effort, so that, when it comes to the technology that we carry, which are chemical oxidant, chemical reductant, enhanced bioremediation, permeable active reactive barrier amendments, or metal stabilization issues, we do a niche approach for the sites. Every year, we deal with anywhere between 400 to 500 sites all across Canada, where we apply an initial design. We have lab capability that can demonstrate we can meet that remedial objective. And at the end, obviously, we supply the chemistry to the site and work with the different contractors, different consultants, different stakeholders across Canada to make of these site and application hopefully a success. Ending up with our corporate contact information, we're located in Quebec for our headquarters. And on the acknowledgement part, I'll thank the Canadian Brownfield Network, Golden Environmental, and also Ventus Environmental that were all part in helping me putting together what I hope it is an interesting presentation for all of you. I thank you again for your time today. I hope you'll enjoy the Global Summit put up by our friend Travis. And I would love to have been there with you, if not of the COVID crisis. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and you have all of you a good day and a good conference. Thanks again for your time. Talk to you soon.
Well, our next speaker is Marco Falconi, and he is from Italy, as you can imagine by that name. And he works for ISPRA, which is, of course, the Italian EPA. I say, of course, maybe that's because I know that. But anyway, Marco he's opened up 3 of our workshops when we've been in Italy. We've done 2 in Milan and 1 in Rome, and all 3, Marco has come. But he is, matter of fact, around the globe, as some of our international speakers know who he is and work with him. And so he's really world-renowned. I know he's humble. He would say, Travis, but the truth is he's world-renowned. And so it's an honor to have him really kind of speak on behalf of Europe and what he sees going on in terms of cleaning up the pollution. So again, take some good notes, and you're in for a treat here with Marco Falconi.
Good morning. My name is Marco Falconi. I work for ISPRA, that's the Italian Institute for Environmental Protection and Research, and specifically I work in a unit of contaminated sites, a unit that deals with the contaminated sites of the national priority list, are the 41 most polluted areas in Italy. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers, specifically Travis, for inviting me. It's an honor to be here with this panel of speakers. It's a pity, however, not being in Charlotte, but quarantines and flight limits are too risky for me and for all. And so it will be for next time in USA. The index of my presentation. We will start from dimension and numbers of contaminated sites in Europe. We will continue with the relevant activities of European Commission. I will present you the most important European networks and how to networking with those networks. And then, staying connected to the title of my presentation, the challenges of contaminated sites in Europe. Dimension and numbers in Europe is not easy to be described because Europe has no common legislation on contaminated sites. There is no directive specific on soil, and so the first problem was that every country have different legislation, different definitions. And so, when reporting to the European Commission on contaminated sites, there was the risk to compare apples and oranges. Some country applies risk assessment, someone not, and just threshold. The threshold are different. There are threshold for screening and are threshold for intervention. So it's a very scattered situation. The Joint Research Center came up with this questionnaire in 2018, fixing the so-called site statuses. This is not the meaning of implement new definition in the member state, but for the reporting to the European Commission, they should apply those 6 definitions that are site status 1, the number of places where polluting activities took place, 2, sites in need of investigation, 3, sites that have been investigated but no remediation is needed, 4, sites that need or might need remediation, 5, sites that are with ongoing remediation, site status 6, how many sites have been remediated. So with those definitions, we have something in common between all the states of Europe. In this graph, you find the number of sites in need of or under detailed investigation, the site status number 2. The member states have been, or the responding countries, have been divided into 3 classes. Countries with less than 1,000 sites in site status 2, countries with a number of sites comprehended between 1,000 and 10,000, and countries that have more than 10,000 sites in site status 2. There are also some countries that were not responding and or other that have no data on this specific site status. For downloading the full report, you may find below the link to download the full report. Another relevant question is about the inventories in Europe. The management of inventories where polluting activities took or are taking place are divided, as you can see, in 9 classes, so it's very scattered situation. We have inventories national level, at regional level, at local level, a mixed management level, some countries that have no registry at all, that it's also bad because the transparency in real estate market for the transparency is needed also the information of if a contaminated sites were exactly there or in the nearby. And so this is, however, the situation that we have now in Europe for inventories. Another important information is about the orphan sites. The question was if there is a funding mechanism to deal with the orphan sites. For orphan site, it is meant a site where the company is not anymore liable. So we have most countries have a national program to deal with those orphan sites, and some countries have regional programs, and just Cyprus have private funds. Someone has also no program for orphan sites. That would mean also to leave the problem to future generation. It's not good for the environment for them. So the status of soil contamination in Europe, in a nutshell, I would say a picture more than a status, because the contaminated sites management is very, very interactive, and it depends to the period. So we may make a picture on a certain period. So we have an estimation of 2.8 million of sites where polluting activities took or are taking place, 306,000 sites in need of investigation, where there is a clear suspicion of contamination, 122,000 investigated sites, but no remediation is needed after the investigation. So you took chemical samples of soils and groundwater, and you declared it as non-contaminated. 148 sites that need or might need remediation. 14,000 sites that are ongoing remediation or risk reduction measures, 60 3 sites that are with finished, that have finished their remediation, so the activities are finished. So this is the picture most reliable that we have at the moment on the European situation on contaminated sites. Another relevant question is where the money comes from. Does the polluter pays principle work well or not? As you can see from this graph, you can see for each European country which is the ratio between private, public and European funds. And you can see that most of the countries are with a ratio of 40 to 60 with respect to the public and private money. That means that the polluter pays principle is not ever applicable to some sites. The second important information is that some countries like Portugal, Estonia, Latvia, Belgium, Slovakia and France were able to get public European money for the remediation of part of their contaminated sites. That's really an important information to share. Continuing with the European funds, maybe some of you are already aware of the big budget that the European Commission put for the European Green Deal that has the objective to arrive to the climate neutrality by 2050, and that have a budget with an estimation of 1,000 billion euro for the first 10 years. And among the actions that are taken into account by the European Green Deal, there is one that is very interesting, that's eliminating pollution, and another restoring biodiversity that may have also some implication on contaminated sites management. And so it's very, very interesting, this big amount of money that is put on the environment in Europe. Then there is the Recovery Fund, that, as you know, it is to recover from the crisis of coronavirus, and the budget is 1,100 billion euro for the period 2021-2027. There are 40 billions for Just in Transition program. Just in Transition is a program that focuses on energy but also on environment, so additional possibilities to for the companies to invest in and to have funds from the European Commission. The European Commission fund out also some research and development program. We will see now a brief video of smart stripping that was funded by European Eco-Innovation. In general, who has a main headquarter in Europe, not just resellers, may have access to this research fund for research and development.
Here they are. Do you know them? These are the organic volatile and semi-volatile contaminants such as trichloroethylene and benzene. Carcinogenic substances that frequently pollute our planet's groundwater. It's many years that several technologies have been applied to eliminate them. Expensive and not so environmentally friendly remediation processes that do not treat the whole sets of contaminants that then continue to pollute our environment. However, today it is possible to fight them much more effectively thanks to smart stripping. A green remediation system blowing only air into the contaminated groundwater and without extracting groundwater moves volatile contaminants in the upper unsaturated soils, catching them up in an activated carbon closed air circuit. A circular cleanup. Compared to other systems, smart stripping is sustainable, has low energy consumption, uses only air as a carrier and produces only recyclable wastes. Fast. It does not require prior authorization from the regulators. Cost-effective. remediation costs can be as 60% lower than other remedial techniques. Efficient removes up to 3 times more contaminants in the same amount of time. Furthermore, smart stripping works also in complex situations thanks to its horizontal installation, not allowing contaminants to escape the property boundaries. With smart stripping, pollution has no way out. If applicable to your site, join our consortium to work with us. smartstripping.ecosurvey.it.
After smart stripping, let's deal with successful stories. In Europe, of course, we don't have just a successful story. There are many brownfields that are still to be addressed. But here I want to show you some publications that are on the left, stories from remediated sites and brownfield from member states, such as stories in Europe. It's a publication from Joint Research Center that's the part of the European Commission. And then on the right you find a report of United Nations Environmental Programme that helped Serbia in its environmental fulfillment. And this is really important because a key issue to foster, to promote the global environment is to act in developing countries, helping them to develop their legislation, sharing with them good practices. Especially in developing countries, it's important because the environment is not among their key priorities. So I feel that this publication was a good example to share with you. One among the recent news is the publication of the new report from SURF UK and Clare about sustainable remediation. In this new report, there are new metrics for evaluating the sustainability of the choice of remediation that, as you know, who is in this field know, are divided in environmental, economic and social. There are 15 different parameters to be addressed, and I would say that SURF UK and Clare are the reference for Europe for the sustainable remediation because they deal with these topics since 2010. It's 10 years ago, so they have a long history in this in promoting the sustainability in remediation activities. Networking, as any other fields, is important also in the contaminated sites topic. We have different networks in Europe. There is the Common Forum, that is a network of experts coming from institutions, policymakers, technical advisors, that exchange knowledge and expertise, and the Common Forum is more or less a discussion platform for all the more tricky situation in the European countries. We have then Nicole, that is basically the same for industry, academia and consultants, that has the same objective, exchange knowledge and expertise, and being as a discussion platform. Nicole has also subsidies in Latin America and in Africa, so they are expanding their network also in other continents. Other networks, other institutions that are worth to be reported here are EUNET, that is the European Environment Information and Observation Network, that basically relates with many other institutions for the purpose of soil protection. EUNET is linked with the Directorate General Environment, with the expert group on soil protection, with the Joint Research Center that prepares the report on contaminated sites, and the European Environmental Agency that from EUNET there is an input to the State of Environmental Report in 2020. These are the so-called official networks coming from institutions, European institutions. Another important network is called IMPEL. That's the European Union Network for Implementation and Enforcement of Environmental Law. It's made of inspectorates and environmental protection agencies of Europe, and IMPEL has the objectives of uniform application of European directives to help countries that need support and develop new tools and approaches for a better environmental compliance. So in IMPEL there is a project where I'm project manager that may interest you. It's called the Water and Land Remediation. We are going to prepare a questionnaire that will be released in October 2020 for in situ chemical oxidation and soil vapor extraction, and the final index of both reports will be as you can see here, from starting from an introduction, feasibility study that would be prepared for that technique, in field test, performance monitoring and conclusion. And in annex we will collect case studies from any institution or private companies that think would like to be included in this report. The publication of the report will be in March 2021. Of course, I'm seeking for case studies because the final objective is to have a common understanding how to do a feasibility study, how to perform and control a test in field, and how to control the monitoring, how to monitor the performance of a remediation in a way that we are able to understand if a remediation is going well or there is something that should be changed in the management. We are now to the challenges, that is the title of my presentations, challenges in contaminated sites in Europe. I have to say that these are my views and not necessarily reflects the institution I belong. Let's start with PFAS. We have a big debate in Europe on those compounds at political level. In Italy, we are trying to insert them in revise the legislation to put them in the short list of contaminants to be analyzed in soil and groundwater. It's not easy even the characterization of those compounds, because we have precursors, we have new PFAS that are now in the market like Gen X, and so it's a very complex situation. With PFAS, also the other emerging contaminants is a challenge, because when an emerging contaminant is not analyzed, you don't get the problem. In these families of emerging contaminants, the priorities could be the pharmaceutical products, microplastics, personal care products, glyphosate, and so on. The second challenge is regarding the vapor intrusion. The vapor intrusion is a challenge, has been a challenge for many years. Now we know how to analyze the vapor intrusion. There are many technologies like soil gas density probe, soil gas subslab. There is also a presentation from Laura Kilcoat from Cost Colvin. I know. There is the flux chamber, there are the passive samplers, and there is also the analysis of ambient air. So basically the challenge is now how to combine those different monitoring technologies into a decision. I mean, sometimes you have some techniques that tells you that there is a risk, another one that tells you that the risk is not present. And so the challenge is to address, to combine all those technologies and all different monitoring campaigns that may say something different from one month to another. The third challenge is the full application of the polluter space principle. That is not easy because we have sometimes orphan sites with no liable companies, active sites with some areas that are not accessible, and so you don't apply remediation in those areas. Big mega sites with more than 10 companies that are polluting the groundwater, sometimes with the same pollutants that are in the production cycle of many of those companies. And so it's not easy to apply the polluter space principle. Interesting if someone in the EnvrioSummit will be able to explain me how to address these problems. The application of sustainability concepts that are already in our legislation. The choice of which remediation technique is on the shoulder of the project manager and sometimes on the shoulder of the site owner. We, as public authorities, we have few instruments to promote sustainable remediation. If someone would like to use dig and dump, I have no instruments to avoid them or to suggest them, because let's say the decision is up to them. So the question is to understand if there should be an evaluation of sustainability of a remediation technique or in comparison to another or not, because otherwise putting just the sustainability concept in the legislation is not sufficient. Then we have high resolution site characterization and good delivery of reagents. Those two aspects, two challenges are very, very well connected. We use the characterization of a grid that could be 50 meters. That grid could be useful just for screening of soil quality, but for a full understanding of the conceptual site model, or for a better delivery of reagent, we need something more detailed that we have to understand will save time and money to the project manager and to the project. The last challenge is regarding the monitoring of remediation activities. We have in Italy a bad case study of a petrol station where the project manager applied the pump and treat for 19 years. 19, I mean 9. It's a lot of time. So the cost of the remediation is by far higher than the real estate value. In my opinion, we need something similar to the what is applied in the United States by EPA, that is the 5 years review. At the scheduled time, maybe 5 years, 10 years, we may decide. All stakeholders should meet and evaluate which is the best choice for that site. Otherwise, it happens that some sites have such a situation that we have in that petrol station. For who is not tired of those 3 days in EnvrioSummit, I would invite you to join me in Remtech Europe that will go full in digital this year from 21 of September to the 25 of September. As you can see here, there are a rich program with a lot of challenges, from starting from sustainable remediation, vapor intrusion, PFAS, and in situ anaerobic bioremediation. To participate, you have just to register. It's free. You have to register in the link that is reported in the headline, and do it before 15 of September. There are 298 places, seats, virtual seats available, because one is for me and one is already booked for Travis, that I hope will be able to join me in this challenging event. This was the last slide. I wish to thank you everybody, in particular Travis for inviting me, but also you all, because I'm not sure of the quality of the audio and could be a little bit boring to listen to a registered voice in a big conference. However, thank you very much for your patience and enjoy EnvrioSummit.
Well, thanks again to Marco. You know, like I said, we've done workshops all across Europe, not just Italy. I think it's been 15 or 18 different cities that we've been to. But here's a really good time for us to take a break, whether you're in person here at the hotel. Let's stretch our legs, and we've listened to a couple of speakers and some really good kind of warm up to the day, but stretch your legs and then we'll come back after 30 minutes. And by the way, if you're watching online, make sure that you sign up for the virtual breakout sessions for this afternoon. So if you've registered online, but yet you haven't actually selected one of the breakout sessions, do that right now. Click on one of the link here and select one of the breakout sessions so you can continue the training this afternoon.